The asteroid's surface cracked open with a silent scream, a geyser of dust and ice crystals sent spiraling into the void. Alarms blared through the cramped corridors of the mining station, the red emergency lights casting an ominous glow over panicked faces. Rena Kessler's hand slammed against the console, her fingers dancing over controls in a frenzied ballet. "Seal the eastern shaft," she shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos like a knife. Her eyes were locked onto the monitor, where the readings from the seismic sensors painted a grim picture. They had drilled too deep, too greedily, and the asteroid had finally retaliated. "Rena, the seals aren't responding." A voice crackled over the comms, barely audible over the growing cacophony. It was Marcus, her second in command, his usually calm demeanor frayed to the edges. "Override it manually," she barked back, her mind racing. "If we lose that shaft, we lose the station." The station was not just a mining operation, it was a lifeline, a bastion of hope clinging to the rugged exterior of asteroid 47C. In its bowels, hidden beneath layers of rock and secrecy, lay the research base, a clandestine project that could alter the balance of power in the galaxy. But that secret was on the brink of exposure, as the tremors threatened to unravel everything they had built. The base's corridors were a maze of metal and wires, designed to confuse any unwanted visitors but now turning against its own inhabitants as they scrambled to contain the disaster. The air was thick with tension and the acrid smell of overheating circuits. "Rena, it's not just the shaft," Marcus's voice came again, this time colder, more urgent. "We've got company. 6 unidentified ships just dropped out of warp. They're blocking our escape routes." Her heart skipped a beat, the implications crashing down like a tidal wave. Of course, it wasn't just an accident, it was a trap. The ships belonged to the consortium, the shadowy megacorp that had been sniffing around their operation for months. They must have disabled the seals remotely, using the seismic event as a cover to mount their assault. "We're under siege," Rena murmured, more to herself than anyone else. She took a deep breath, forcing calm into her voice. "All personnel, prepare for lockdown. This is not a drill. Activate Protocol Theta." Lockdown meant they would be sealed inside the station, cut off from any hope of reinforcement or escape. But it was their only chance to keep the consortium at bay. Their research, the culmination of years of toil and sacrifice, must not fall into enemy hands. The echoes of running feet and shouted commands filled the corridors as the lockdown commenced, security doors sliding shut with a dull thunk. The station's heart slowed, the once bustling hub of activity now a fortress of silence. In the command center, Rena watched the screens, her team assembled around her. Marcus, his face set in grim determination, stood by her side, his presence a steadying force. Miko, their tech wizard, was already tapping furiously at her console, trying to outsmart the consortium's hackers. "We have to buy ourselves time," Rena said, her mind working furiously. "If we can hold out long enough, maybe." A sudden jolt cut her off, the entire station shuddering as if gripped by an invisible hand. The consortium was making its move, their ships firing upon the asteroid with surgical precision. The first impact was followed by another, and then another, each one a death knell for their defenses. "Shields are holding, but they won't last long," Miko reported, her voice tinged with urgency. "We need a distraction, something to keep them off our backs." Rena nodded, her mind racing through possibilities. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had one advantage: the asteroid's unpredictable geology. If they could manipulate the environment, they might just buy themselves the time they needed. "Marcus, can we trigger another quake?" she asked, her eyes meeting his. "Something big enough to force them to reposition?" Marcus considered for a moment, then nodded. "It's risky, but we can overload the drill cores. It'll amplify the natural fault lines." "Do it," Rena decided, her gaze sweeping over her team. "Prepare for the aftershocks. And Miko, see if you can get an SOS out to the nearby outposts. We need allies, fast." As her team sprang into action, Rena turned her attention back to the monitors. On the screen, the consortium ships loomed like predators, their weapons trained on the beleaguered station. But this was no ordinary prey they had cornered. This was humanity, fierce and unyielding, refusing to go quietly into the night. Minutes ticked by as Marcus and Miko worked their respective magic, the air almost crackling with anticipation. Rena could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on her, the responsibility of not just the research but the lives of everyone in the station. Then, with a suddenness that took her breath away, the asteroid convulsed. The artificial quake rippled through the rock, a shuddering beast awakened from slumber. Outside, the consortium ships reeled, their precision faltering as they adjusted to the unexpected turbulence. "Now," Rena shouted, the command echoing through the comms as Miko unleashed a barrage of false signals and data spikes, a digital smokescreen to further confound their attackers. For a few precious moments, the station was forgotten amid the chaos, the consortium's attention diverted by the natural theater of destruction unfolding around them. It was a fleeting advantage, but one they couldn't afford to waste. "Rena, SOS is out," Miko reported, her eyes locked on her screens. "But it could take hours before help arrives." "Then we make those hours count," Rena replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging outside. She knew the consortium wouldn't be thrown off for long, a temporary reprieve, not a victory. As the seconds stretched into minutes, the station's inhabitants settled into a tense waiting game. The consortium ships were regrouping, their intent clear: to starve them out, to wait until the station's resources dwindled to nothing. Rena paced the command center, her mind a whirl of calculations and contingencies. They had supplies for a month, maybe more if rationed strictly, but morale was a different matter. The crew couldn't sustain on emergency rations and hope alone. It was then that Rena realized their greatest weapon wasn't just the asteroid's treacherous terrain or their technological prowess. It was boredom, an insidious enemy that could turn the tide in their favor. If they could make the siege as dull and uneventful as possible, they might just outlast their besiegers. "Marcus, get the crew on a schedule," she instructed, a plan forming in her mind. Routine drills, maintenance, anything to keep them occupied and focused. "And the consortium?" Marcus asked, his gaze sharp, probing. "Let them think we're beaten," Rena replied, a determined light in her eyes. "We'll play dead while we gather our strength. They'll get restless, complacent. That's when we'll strike." The days blurred into a monotonous rhythm. Rena kept the crew engaged with tasks, rotating shifts to ensure everyone stayed fresh. Marcus led training exercises, honing their skills even in the confines of the station. Miko, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to explore new ways to disrupt the consortium's sensors and communications. Outside, the consortium ships hovered like vultures, waiting for their prey to falter. But inside the station, a quiet resolve was building, a defiance that refused to be extinguished. As the third week of the siege drew to a close, Rena could sense the change. Her team had adapted, their spirits lifted by the routine that had once seemed like a burden. They had turned the station into a fortress of resilience, their solidarity a shield against the crushing weight of isolation. Then, one night, as Rena reviewed the station's dwindling resources, a message crackled over the comms. It was garbled, barely intelligible, but the meaning was clear. "Reinforcements. En route. Hold." Hope surged through her chest, a fire rekindled. They just had to hold on a little longer. She relayed the message to her team, their faces lighting up with renewed determination. But the consortium wasn't going to sit idle while their prey slipped away. As if sensing the shift in momentum, their ships began a new barrage, the station shuddering under the renewed assault. Rena clung to the console, her mind racing. They couldn't withstand another full-scale attack, not without reinforcements. But if they could survive just a little longer. "Marcus, Miko, it's time," she said, her voice firm. "We need one final push. Prepare our defenses and get ready to execute Plan Omega." Plan Omega. A desperate gambit, their last ace in the hole. If it failed, there would be no escape. But if it succeeded, they would turn the tide of the battle. The station's corridors buzzed with activity as the crew prepared for the final act. Systems were rerouted, power diverted to the shields, every ounce of energy channeled into holding the line. The consortium ships loomed larger on the screens, their intent unmistakable. They were coming in for the kill, confident in their impending victory. But as they closed in, the asteroid once again became their ally. With a deafening roar, the station's hidden weapons emerged, powered by the very energy the consortium had tried to starve them of. Ion cannons and missile turrets unleashed a furious volley, the sudden onslaught catching the enemy by surprise. The consortium ships reeled, their formation shattered, and in that moment of chaos, Rena gave the order. The station's engines roared to life, the asteroid itself a weapon now, propelling forward with the force of a cosmic leviathan. The consortium, caught off guard, scrambled to evade the juggernaut bearing down on them. Two ships collided in their haste, a brilliant explosion lighting up the void. As the dust settled, Rena watched the remaining ships retreat, their formation broken, their arrogance shattered. They had underestimated their quarry, and now they paid the price. The comms crackled to life once more, this time with the welcome voices of their reinforcements. Relief washed over the crew, their cheers echoing through the station. Rena allowed herself a moment of triumph, her heart a swell of pride. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their unity a beacon against the void's despair. But the work was far from over. As the reinforcements arrived and the consortium remnants were pursued, Rena knew the fight for their future had only just begun. She looked at her team, her comrades, and saw in their eyes the same determination that burned in her own. Together, they would rebuild, stronger and more resolute than ever before. And as the stars once again blinked to life outside the viewport, Rena smiled, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had outlasted the siege, not with brute force or cunning alone, but with the quiet strength of those who refused to surrender. The echo of metal against metal resonated through the narrow corridors of the mining ship, the rhythmic clangs a stark contrast to the tense silence that filled the air. Mia, her hands gripping the cold, hard edge of the console, watched as news of the revolt spread like wildfire through the network of miners. Her eyes flitted across the screens, which displayed a chaotic array of data and comms chatter. "Got another one." Ethan's voice crackled through her earpiece, filled with forced calmness. He was stationed in the control hub, coordinating the efforts to secure the ship's systems. "The crew on Deck C is joining us. That makes nearly 80% of the ship." Mia exhaled, her breath fogging the glass panel in front of her. "Good," she replied, her voice steady. "We need every set of hands we can muster if we're going to stand a chance." The asteroid mining colony they worked for, an amalgamation of human ingenuity and relentless corporate oversight, had finally pushed its workers too far. The latest incident, a catastrophic equipment failure that left 2 miners dead and several injured, had been the breaking point. It was more than faulty machinery, it was the negligence and callous disregard from the corporate overlords that had sparked this revolt. Across the deck, Marcus, a seasoned miner whose grizzled beard was streaked with gray, nodded grimly as he secured a crate of supplies. "We can't let him think we're just gonna roll over," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. His words were a mantra, a reminder of why they were fighting. Mia turned to face him, her expression determined. "We've got the numbers, Marcus. Now we just need to hold the line until we can get a message out." He gave a gruff nod, but his eyes flicked towards the viewport where the vastness of space loomed, dotted with distant stars. "And what happens when they send reinforcements?" "We'll deal with that when it happens," Mia replied, her voice a steel edge. "Right now, we focus on securing the ship and getting our people to safety." Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently, throwing Mia off balance. She caught herself on the edge of the console as warning lights flared red across the control panels. Ethan's voice came through immediately, tense with urgency. "Mia, they've breached the aft engine room. Automated defenses are down." Mia's heart pounded as she processed the implications. The company's security forces had underestimated the miners' resolve, but they were swift and ruthless when they struck. If they gained control of the engine room, they could cripple the entire ship, and any hope of escape. "Marcus, get over there with a team. We can't let them take it," Mia ordered, her mind racing with possibilities. "Ethan, patch me through to the intercom." A moment later, her voice echoed through the ship. "All hands, this is Mia. We need reinforcements at the aft engine room immediately. Stay vigilant and look out for each other. We are not alone in this fight." As the message repeated, Mia felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Sarah, a young engineer with fire in her eyes and grease smudged across her cheek. "We're not giving up, right?" Mia shook her head, her resolve unwavering. "Never." Together, they made their way toward the aft section, weaving through the labyrinthine passages of the ship. The air was thick with tension, the weight of what they were doing pressing down on them, but there was also a sense of camaraderie, a shared purpose that bound them together. As they reached the engine room, the sound of gunfire and shouts filled the air. Marcus and his team were already engaged in a firefight with the security forces, their makeshift barricades a testament to their hastily assembled defense. "Mia," Marcus shouted over the din, waving her over. "We're holding, but we need to push them back." Mia nodded, her mind racing as she assessed the situation. "Sarah, get to the control panel. See if you can reroute power to the automated defenses." Sarah nodded, ducking low as she made her way to the console. Her fingers danced across the keys, her focus absolute as she worked to bring the systems back online. Meanwhile, Mia grabbed a discarded weapon, its weight unfamiliar in her hands. She took a deep breath, the chaos of the moment sharpening her senses. "We push them back on my mark," she instructed, meeting Marcus's gaze. "Ready?" He nodded, hefting his own weapon with grim determination. "Ready." Mia counted down, her voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. 3, 2, 1, now. They surged forward as one, a tide of defiance against the corporate security forces. The air was filled with the crackle of gunfire and the acrid scent of smoke, but the miners fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope. Mia fired at the advancing forces, her heart pounding with each shot. She wasn't a soldier, but she had something the enemy didn't, a cause worth fighting for. "Sarah, how's it coming?" she shouted over the din, ducking behind cover as bullets whizzed past. "Almost there," Sarah called back, her voice strained with concentration. Just a few more seconds. A sudden explosion rocked the corridor, sending a shockwave through the air. Mia shielded her face from the debris, her ears ringing from the blast. For a moment, everything was chaos and confusion. When the dust settled, she saw Marcus slumped against the wall, his face contorted in pain. Her heart lurched as she scrambled over to him. "Marcus," he grimaced, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. "I'm okay," he insisted, though his voice was hoarse. "Just a little banged up." Mia nodded, relief flooding through her. "We need to keep pushing. We can't let them take this ship." With renewed determination, they pressed the attack. The tide was turning in their favor, the security forces falling back under the relentless assault of the miners. Suddenly, Sarah's voice cut through the chaos, triumphant and clear. "Got it. Automated defenses are back online." The sound of gun turrets powering up filled the corridor, adding to the cacophony. The security forces hesitated, their advance faltering as the ship's internal defenses came to life, targeting them with precision. "Now's our chance," Mia shouted, rallying the miners for a final push. With a roar of defiance, they surged forward, driving the security forces back. The corridor became a battleground, but the miners fought with a unity and resolve that could not be broken. As the last of the security forces retreated, Mia took a moment to catch her breath, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. They had won this skirmish, but the war was far from over. Ethan's voice crackled through her earpiece once more. "Mia, we've got incoming. Multiple ships, heading our way." Mia's heart sank as she processed the news. The corporation was sending reinforcements, determined to crush the revolt before it could spread. They were running out of time. "We need to get that message out," Mia said, her mind racing. "We need help if we're going to hold them off." Sarah joined her, her expression grim but resolute. "We can do it. We have to." Together, they made their way to the communications deck, their footsteps echoing through the silent corridors. Every moment counted, every second bringing the corporate reinforcements closer. As they reached the comms room, they found it already manned by a small team of miners, all working tirelessly to establish a link with the outside world. "Any luck?" Mia asked, her voice urgent. One of the miners, a wiry man named David, looked up from his console. "We've got a signal, but it's weak. They're jamming us pretty hard." Mia's mind raced as she considered their options. They needed to get a message out, to tell the world what was happening here. But the corporation's jamming technology was sophisticated, designed to keep their dirty secrets hidden from prying eyes. "Can we boost the signal?" she asked, desperation creeping into her voice. David nodded, though his expression was doubtful. "We can try, but it'll take time." Time was a luxury they didn't have. The reinforcements would be upon them soon, and once they were overwhelmed, the corporation would show no mercy. "Do it," Mia said, her voice firm. "We'll buy you as much time as we can." As David and his team worked to boost the signal, Mia and Sarah prepared to defend the comms room. The corridors beyond were eerily silent, the calm before the storm. "Do you think anyone will hear us?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. Mia met her gaze, her own resolve reflected in the younger woman's eyes. "I have to believe they will," she replied. "And even if they don't, we have to make them hear us." Suddenly, the ship shuddered again, a deep rumble that reverberated through the hull. The reinforcements had arrived, and the battle was about to begin anew. "Get ready," Mia called out, rallying the miners who had joined them in defending the comms room. "We hold this position no matter what." The sound of footsteps echoed through the corridors, the corporate forces advancing with military precision. They were well trained, heavily armed, and determined to crush the revolt at any cost. Mia gripped her weapon tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it, the moment that would determine their fate. As the first shots rang out, the corridor erupted into chaos once more. The miners fought with everything they had, their resolve unyielding as they defended what little ground they could. Sarah worked alongside Mia, the two women a formidable team as they fired at the advancing forces. Despite their exhaustion, their spirits remained unbroken, fueled by the knowledge that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. The battle raged on, the corridor filled with smoke and the acrid scent of burnt metal. The corporate forces were relentless, their numbers seeming to multiply with each passing moment. But the miners held their ground, their defiance a beacon of hope in the darkness. And as the fighting intensified, a sudden burst of static filled the air, followed by David's triumphant shout. "We're through." The signals boosted. Mia's heart leapt as she heard his words. They had done it. They had managed to break through the jamming, to send their message out into the void. "Keep it going," she shouted, her voice barely audible over the din of battle. "We need to hold on just a little longer." The miners rallied, their determination renewed by the knowledge that their message had been sent. They fought with renewed vigor, their spirits lifted by the hope that help was on the way. But even as they held the line, the corporate forces pressed their attack, determined to crush the revolt once and for all. The battle was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. As the fighting continued, Mia felt a steely resolve settle over her. They would not go quietly into the night. They would fight with everything they had, for their fallen comrades, for their families, and for the future they had dared to dream of. The corridor was a maelstrom of chaos and fury, but amidst the turmoil, a sense of hope flickered to life, a beacon that refused to be extinguished. And as the miners fought on, their message ringing out across the stars, the world beyond their small corner of the universe began to take notice. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, they were not alone. The dim glow of the mining colony's emergency lights barely illuminated the cramped control room as the distant hum of machinery pulsed through the station. Across the room, a flickering monitor displayed the latest communiques from the besieging forces, a coalition of alien corporations that had deemed human independence a threat to their galactic monopoly on asteroid mining. Captain Laura Chen, the de facto leader of the beleaguered colony, leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady yet weary. Her crew, a ragtag group of miners and engineers, moved with a tense energy, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. Supplies were dwindling faster than they had anticipated. Rations had been cut, and water was recycled to the last drop. The aliens had promised them a quick surrender, but humanity's stubbornness had turned this into a drawn-out siege. "How's it looking, Raj?" Laura asked, breaking the silence. Her voice carried an unwavering calm that belied the turmoil within. Raj Patel, the chief engineer, rubbed his eyes and squinted at the console's readouts. "Not good, Cap. We've got maybe 2 weeks before we run out of essential supplies. The shield's holding, but it's only a matter of time before they find a way through." Laura nodded, absorbing the grim reality. "And the morale?" A soft chuckle came from the corner of the room where Alice, the youngest member of the crew, sat cross-legged on the floor, fiddling with a makeshift game console. "We're bored out of our minds, but we're hanging in there. It's amazing what a human can endure when they have no other choice." Laura allowed herself a small smile. Alice had a knack for seeing the glass half full, a trait that had become indispensable in their current plight. "Keep those games going, Alice. Distraction is our best weapon right now." "Aye, Captain," Alice replied with a salute, her fingers never pausing from their dance over the console. Laura turned back to Raj. "And the communications? Any luck reaching out for help?" Raj shook his head, his expression darkening. "Still nothing. The jamming field they've set up is impenetrable. We're on our own for now." The room fell silent once more, the weight of their isolation settling heavily over them. Laura wished she could offer more than platitudes, but the truth was, they were outmatched. The aliens had technology centuries ahead of humanity's, and their forces were seemingly limitless. The only advantage the humans had was their stubborn resolve and sheer ingenuity, traits that had carried them this far. "All right, crew," Laura said, standing up and clapping her hands to gather their attention. "Let's keep our heads in the game. We need to find ways to stretch our resources and keep the boredom at bay. Raj, see if you can boost the recycling efficiency. Alice, keep everyone entertained. And if anyone comes up with a crazy idea, I want to hear it." Raj and Alice exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They were a family now, bound by circumstance and the shared goal of survival. Despite the odds, there was a warmth among them, a camaraderie that no alien power could break. As the days dragged on, the colony settled into a routine. Boredom was their constant shadow, but the humans were nothing if not resourceful. Raj managed to improve the efficiency of their recycling systems, buying them precious time. Alice organized games and storytelling sessions, weaving tales of Earth's history and the indomitable spirit of humanity. Yet, as the siege wore on, the pressure mounted. Supplies dwindled to critical levels, and tempers began to fray. The aliens, aware of their advantage, tightened their grip, cutting off any hope of outside assistance. Desperation clawed at the edges of the crew's resolve. One evening, as the crew gathered for their makeshift meal, a heated argument broke out. Sam, a burly miner with a temper to match, slammed his fist on the table, causing the tin cups to rattle. "This is madness," he shouted, his voice echoing off the metallic walls. "We're sitting ducks in here. We should be doing something, not just waiting for them to starve us out." Laura remained calm, though her heart ached with the same frustration. "And what would you have us do, Sam? Charge out there and get ourselves killed?" Sam met her gaze, defiance in his eyes. "Maybe. Better to die fighting than waste away in here." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, but Laura held up a hand, silencing them. "I understand how you feel, but we have to be smart about this. Biding our time doesn't mean we're giving up. It means we're waiting for the right opportunity." Raj leaned forward, his voice steady. "And if that opportunity doesn't come, Cap?" Laura hesitated, the weight of leadership a heavy mantle on her shoulders. "Then we make one. Humans have a knack for turning the tide when all seems lost. We just need to hold on a little longer." The crew fell into a contemplative silence, and Laura hoped her words had reached them. She knew the odds were stacked against them, but her gut told her there was still a chance, a slim one, but a chance nonetheless. As the days turned into weeks, the struggle against despair became more pronounced. The aliens, sensing the humans' growing vulnerability, intensified their psychological warfare, broadcasting messages designed to erode their resolve. But still, the humans held firm, clinging to each other in the hope of a miracle. It was during one of these broadcasts that something caught Alice's attention. A snippet of alien dialogue, a casual remark about the humans' stubbornness, sparked an idea. She spent hours poring over the data, her mind racing with possibilities. "Laura," Alice said one evening, her eyes alight with excitement. "I think I might have found a way to disrupt their jamming field. It's a long shot, but if we can tweak our communication systems just right, we might be able to get a message out." Laura's heart skipped a beat. "Are you sure?" Alice nodded, her confidence infectious. "It's risky, but I believe it's our best shot." Raj joined the conversation, his curiosity piqued. "What do you need from us, Alice?" "Time and trust," Alice replied. "I'll need everyone's help to reconfigure the systems. It's going to be tricky, but if we can pull it off, we might just find a way to turn this around." Laura placed a hand on Alice's shoulder, her expression one of gratitude and hope. "Let's do it. We've got nothing to lose and everything to gain." The crew rallied around Alice, each member contributing their skills to the plan. For the first time in weeks, a sense of purpose infused their actions, the promise of hope driving them forward. It was a delicate dance, balancing the need for stealth with the urgency of their situation. As Alice worked, her mind wandered to her family back on Earth, the loved ones who believed in her and the future she had chosen among the stars. She thought of their laughter, their warmth, and the unyielding support that had carried her through the toughest times. That warmth was her anchor, and she poured all of it into the task at hand. The crew worked tirelessly, their exhaustion overshadowed by determination. Bit by bit, they dismantled and reassembled the communication array, guided by Alice's vision and Raj's technical expertise. Nights and days blurred into one as they pushed the limits of their endurance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the moment of truth arrived. The crew gathered in the control room, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Alice's hands trembled slightly as she made the final adjustments, her confidence bolstered by the unwavering support of her comrades. "Here goes nothing," Alice muttered under her breath as she initiated the sequence. The room held its collective breath as the monitors flickered to life, the familiar static replaced by a clear signal. A burst of excitement coursed through the crew, but they knew the real test lay ahead. "Sending the message now," Alice announced, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. They watched as the message was transmitted, a plea for help sent out into the vastness of space. It was a gamble, but one they were willing to take. As the seconds stretched into minutes, the room remained silent, each member lost in their thoughts and prayers. Raj broke the silence first, his voice a whisper. "Do you think anyone will hear it?" Laura placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've done our part. Now all we can do is wait and hope." The waiting proved to be the hardest part. Time seemed to slow to a crawl, the uncertainty gnawing at their resolve. Yet, amidst the growing despair, there was a flicker of something else, an ember of hope that refused to be extinguished. Days passed with no response, and the weight of their isolation pressed heavily on the crew. But still, they held on, buoyed by the knowledge that they had taken a step, however small, towards changing their fate. And then, when hope was beginning to wane, a crackle came through the speakers. The crew froze, their hearts leaping into their throats. The sound was faint, but unmistakable, a response to their call for help. "This is Captain Marcus Dunn of the Terran Fleet," a voice echoed through the room. "We've received your message and are en route to your location. Hold tight, we're coming to get you." A cheer erupted from the crew, their jubilant cries echoing off the metallic walls. Relief washed over them in waves, the knowledge that they were no longer alone rekindling their spirits. Against all odds, they had reached out into the darkness and found a lifeline. Laura looked around at her crew, pride swelling in her chest. They had done the impossible, standing firm in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a testament to the resilience of humanity, the unyielding spirit that refused to bow to despair. As the colony prepared for the arrival of their rescuers, a newfound sense of purpose infused their every action. They had faced the brink of extinction and emerged stronger for it, bound together by their shared struggle and the hope of a brighter future. For Laura, Raj, Alice, and the rest of the crew, the siege had been a trial by fire, a crucible that had forged them into something more than mere survivors. They were a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a glimmer of hope, a light that could never be extinguished. The silence in the makeshift command room was almost suffocating. The glow from the scattered computer screens painted anxious faces with hues of blue and green. A single, flickering overhead light cast long shadows that seemed to dance eerily on the metal walls of the asteroid mining station. The room used to be a maintenance bay, but the uprising had transformed it into the heart of their rebellion. Captain Mira Kessler, the reluctant leader of the revolt, stood at the center. Her once pristine uniform was now a collage of oil stains and rips, but her eyes burned with defiance. She studied the holographic map projected in front of her, tracing the blockade of ships that had tightened like a noose around the asteroid. Just days ago, the miners had seized the station, weary of the oppressive regulations and dangerous working conditions imposed by the interstellar mineral conglomerate. But the corporate forces had responded with swift brutality, encircling the asteroid and cutting off all communication with the outer colonies. Supplies were dwindling, and Mira knew they couldn't hold out much longer without a breakthrough. "Captain," a voice broke her concentration. It was David Chen, a former engineer turned tactical advisor. He gestured to the screen, where a cluster of red dots indicated the incoming drone swarms. "They're deploying Class 5 drones. Shielded and armed." Myra's jaw tightened. Class 5 drones were notorious for their impenetrable armor and sophisticated AI. They were designed for one purpose: absolute control. "We need a plan," she said, looking around at her crew. "Something they won't see coming. Maybe if we can lure them into the mining tunnels," suggested Aiden, the youngest member of the crew. The rock formations could disrupt their sensors. Too risky, Mira replied. We need to think smarter. As the crew brainstormed, the ever-present hum of the station was punctuated by the distant clangs and grinding of machinery. Remnants of the automated systems that continued their tasks, oblivious to the human drama unfolding. Wait a minute, said a voice from the back. It was Lena, a geologist with a penchant for problem-solving. What about the mineral deposit field? The deposits? Mira asked, intrigued. Yes, they're rich with ferrous metals, Lena explained, her eyes lighting up with an idea. We could use them to create a magnetic field, something powerful enough to scramble the drone's systems, at least temporarily. The room fell silent again, but this time the silence was pregnant with possibility. Do we have the equipment for that? Mira asked, her mind racing. We can repurpose the mining drills, David said, already calculating the logistics. It'll take some time, but it's possible. Mira nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. All right, let's do it. Everyone, you know your tasks. Let's show them what we're made of. As the crew dispersed to execute the plan, Mira stayed behind, staring at the map with renewed determination. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were on borrowed time, but if they could pull this off, they might just buy themselves the opening they desperately needed. The next few hours were a blur of feverish activity. The crew worked tirelessly, rigging the drills and setting up makeshift generators to amplify the magnetic field. Mira moved among them, offering encouragement and lending a hand wherever she could. The station buzzed with a palpable energy, a shared resolve that seemed to bind them all together. But just as they were nearing completion, an urgent message crackled through the comms system. It was one of the lookouts stationed near the outer perimeter. Captain, we've got incoming. It's not just drones, it's a full squadron of troops. They're planning to board. Myra's heart sank. They had anticipated drones, but a direct assault was a different beast entirely. She quickly gathered her team, explaining the new threat. We can't hold them off with sheer force, she said, her voice steady despite the rising tension. We need to be smarter, faster. Use every advantage the station gives us. How about the environmental systems? Aiden suggested. We could create localized atmospheres in certain sections, lure them in, and then vent the air. That could work, Mira agreed. It's risky, but we don't have many options. The crew split into two groups, one to finish the magnetic field, the other to prepare for the boarding party. Mira joined the latter, knowing that every second counted. As they set up traps and barricades, Myra's mind raced. She couldn't help but think of her family back on Earth, her old life before the corporation's greed had pushed her to the brink. She felt a pang of longing, but quickly buried it. There was no room for distraction now. The first wave of troops arrived with a thunderous crash, blasting through the outer airlocks. The station shuddered with the impact, and Myra's heart pounded in her chest. The defenders retreated into the maze of corridors and chambers, drawing the invaders deeper into their web. The plan worked, at first. Several squads were caught in the traps, their suits compromised by sudden decompression. But the enemy adapted quickly, sealing off breaches and pushing forward with ruthless precision. Mira fought alongside her crew, her pulse racing with every exchange of fire. The corridors became battlegrounds, each inch hard-won and fiercely contested. But the corporate forces had numbers on their side, and the defenders were slowly being pushed back. Despite their ingenuity, the situation was growing dire. The enemy was closing in on the command center, and Mira knew that if they lost that, all would be lost. In the midst of the chaos, Lena's voice broke through the comms. Captain, the magnetic field is ready. We're initiating it now. Mira felt a surge of hope. Do it. The station vibrated with a low hum as the field activated. Outside, the drones faltered, their systems scrambled by the interference. Some veered off course, crashing into the asteroid's surface, while others simply shut down. It was a small victory, but it wasn't enough to turn the tide. The boarding party was still advancing, and Myra's heart sank as she realized just how outmatched they were. In that moment, she understood the true cost of their defiance. The dreams of freedom, of a life without oppression, they were slipping away, piece by piece. Mira and her dwindling team made their final stand in the command center, the walls echoing with the sounds of battle. Exhaustion weighed heavily on them, but they fought on with grim determination. Each of them knew what was at stake, and each was willing to pay the ultimate price if it meant keeping the dream alive, even a little longer. As the enemy closed in, Mira caught a fleeting glimpse of something extraordinary in her crew. A resilience, a spirit that refused to be broken. Despite the odds, despite the fear, they were still fighting, still hoping. And in that darkest moment, Mira understood what made humans special. It wasn't the technology, or the weapons, or even the clever tactics. It was the unyielding spirit, the ability to stand in the face of overwhelming adversity and still find the courage to push forward. As the command center's doors buckled under the assault, Mira took a deep breath, ready to give everything she had. They might lose this battle, but as long as they held onto that spirit, they would never truly be defeated. The doors burst open, and the enemy poured in. The final confrontation had begun. The noise from the mining equipment had fallen silent. In its place, a tense, oppressive quiet lingered over the asteroid's surface, broken only by the occasional metallic creak of the habitat modules settling into the rock. The asteroid, once a bustling hub of activity, was now a fortress of desperation. The rebels, a ragtag group of miners and technicians, huddled together in the main chamber of the largest module, faces drawn and eyes weary but fiercely determined. Alex Morgan, the unofficial leader of the revolt, stood by the viewport, peering out into the vast expanse of space. The blackness was punctuated by the distant glow of a patrol ship, its silhouette a reminder of the corporate blockade that encircled them. The conglomerate, Zenith Industries, had cut off all supply lines and communications. The ultimatum was simple: surrender and return to work, or face annihilation. Alex, a voice called softly, pulling her from her thoughts. Maria, the chief engineer, approached, her face a map of grime and exhaustion. The air recyclers are operating at 60% efficiency. Without new filters, we're looking at another week, maybe two. Alex nodded, the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on her shoulders. We'll find a way, Maria. We always do. But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her insides. Supplies were dwindling, and morale was fraying. The corporate drones were relentless in their surveillance, ensuring no ship could break through the blockade undetected. And yet, surrender was not an option. They had come too far, sacrificed too much. As if sensing her turmoil, Maria placed a reassuring hand on Alex's arm. We're with you, all of us. We knew this wouldn't be easy. In the dim light of the habitat, the other rebels nodded in agreement, their resolve unshaken despite the dire circumstances. They had chosen this path not out of recklessness, but out of necessity. The exploitation had to end, not just for themselves but for every miner shackled to Zenith's oppressive contracts. Suddenly, a crackling sound broke the silence, and a voice echoed through the module's intercom system. Attention all personnel, this is Captain Hale of the Zenith corporate fleet. Your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and you will be treated leniently. This is your final warning. The message repeated, cold and devoid of empathy. Alex's jaw tightened. She knew Hale's type, arrogant, assured of his superiority. He saw them as nothing more than a nuisance, a problem to be squashed. But he didn't understand what desperation could drive people to do. We're not giving up, Alex said, her voice firm and steady. We've got something they'll never have, each other. Across the room, Evan, a young technician, raised his hand. What if we use the mining drones? They're small, fast, maybe we can rig them to slip past the blockade. Maria perked up at the suggestion, her mind already racing with possibilities. If we strip them down to the essentials, we could boost their speed and range. Alex nodded, her mind catching the thread of a plan. And we can program them to emit false signatures, make them seem like nothing more than space debris. A spark of hope flickered in the room, igniting the weary spirits of the rebels. They set to work immediately, each person contributing their skills to the effort. The shared sense of purpose was palpable, an unspoken bond that tied them together. Hours turned into days as they toiled, the electric hum of their labor filling the habitat with renewed energy. The drones, once simple tools of their trade, became their lifelines, transformed into sleek, agile vessels. Evan and Maria worked tirelessly, their eyes red-rimmed but alight with determination. Meanwhile, Alex coordinated with the rest of the team, ensuring defenses were maintained and food was rationed. They couldn't afford to falter now, not when the finish line was in sight. On the third day, as the drones were nearing completion, a sudden commotion erupted from the communications bay. Alex rushed over, heart pounding. The view from the monitors displayed a fleet of Zenith ships converging on the asteroid, their intentions unmistakably hostile. "Looks like they're done waiting," Evan muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. Alex scanned the room, meeting the eyes of each rebel. "This is it. We knew this moment would come. But remember, we stand not just for ourselves, but for every worker who's ever been pushed to the brink." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We fight because we believe in a future where no one is enslaved by greed." With a collective nod, the rebels sprang into action. The drones were loaded onto the launch rail, programmed to slip through the blockade and deliver a distress signal to their allies. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. As the Zenith ships drew closer, the asteroid's defenses came to life. Makeshift turrets, crafted from repurposed mining lasers, fired at the encroaching threat. The air was thick with tension, each second a heartbeat of defiance. In the chaos, the drones launched, zipping through the void like silver bullets. Alex watched their progress on the monitor, her breath held, hope and fear intertwined. If they made it through, there was a chance, a slim one, that help would come. The Zenith fleet, confident in their superiority, pressed their attack. But for every volley they unleashed, the rebels answered with equal ferocity. They fought not just with weapons, but with their indomitable spirit. As the battle raged on, Alex found herself back at the viewport, staring out into the vastness of space. The drones were mere specks now, but they represented something far larger, a beacon of human resilience. "Do you think they'll make it?" Maria asked, coming to stand beside her. "They have to," Alex replied, her voice resolute. "We've given them everything we've got." The asteroid shuddered under the bombardment, but the rebels held their ground, united in their cause. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but not outmatched. Not yet. In the distance, the first of the drones slipped past the blockade, its signal broadcasting far and wide. The odds were against them, the path fraught with peril. But if there was one thing humanity excelled at, it was defying expectations. As the battle intensified, Captain Hale's voice crackled over the intercom once more, his tone dripping with disdain. "You are outmatched. Surrender is inevitable." Alex squared her shoulders, defiance burning in her eyes. "Tell your captain he doesn't know what inevitable means." Her words echoed through the module, a rallying cry that invigorated the rebels. Their spirits were bruised but unbroken, their resolve forged in the crucible of adversity. Outside, the drones continued their journey, a testament to human ingenuity and tenacity. They were a whisper in the void, a call to arms that would not go unheard. The rebels fought on, driven by the knowledge that this was more than a battle for survival. It was a fight for dignity, for the right to carve their own destiny. Each moment stretched into eternity, a testament to their endurance. And then, as if by some cosmic alignment, the tide began to turn. The drone's signal reached its intended destination, and a new fleet appeared on the horizon. Allies, answering the call for aid, their ships cutting through the void with purpose. The sight reignited the rebels' flagging spirits, galvanizing them into action. The Zenith fleet, caught off guard by the sudden reinforcements, faltered. Their overconfidence shattered, leaving them vulnerable. As the Allied ships engaged the enemy, a cheer erupted within the habitat. Relief mingled with elation, the promise of hope renewed. The darkest hour had passed, giving way to the breaking dawn of a new beginning. Alex watched as the Zenith fleet began to retreat, their resolve crumbling under the weight of their misjudgment. The battle was not yet won, but the tides had shifted. Humanity's indomitable spirit had prevailed against overwhelming odds. In that moment, the rebels knew they were part of something greater than themselves. They were the spark that would ignite change, the seed of revolution that would grow into a future where freedom reigned. The fight was far from over, but they stood ready, determined to see it through to the end. Together, they would forge a path to a brighter tomorrow, refusing to let their story end in defeat. And as the echoes of battle faded into the void, Alex Morgan turned to her comrades, a fierce light in her eyes. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice steady and strong. "Let's finish what we started." With renewed purpose, they set to work, their hearts and minds united in the cause. The darkest hour had given way to the dawn, and with it, the promise of a future worth fighting for. In the dimly lit control room of the mining station, the air was thick with tension. The steady hum of machinery underscored the unease that had settled over the crew. There was a palpable sense of anticipation, like the electric charge in the air before a storm. The crew of the asteroid mining station, beleaguered but not yet broken, huddled around a central console, their faces illuminated by the flickering screens that displayed vital information about the station's status and the positions of the enemy ships. For weeks, the conglomerate forces had tightened their grip, asserting control over the asteroid mining operations with an iron fist. The workers, a mix of humans and a few other species, had endured the oppression, their spirits dampened but not extinguished. They whispered of resistance, of striking back, but it seemed a distant dream until today. Alec Morgan, the unofficial leader of the revolt, stood at the center of the group, his lean frame projecting a confidence that belied the gravity of their situation. His eyes, intense and unyielding, scanned the faces of his fellow miners. They looked back at him with a mixture of fear and hope. He knew the time had come to act. "We've got one chance to turn this around," Alec began, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "They think they have us cornered, but they don't know what we're capable of. They see us as just miners, just humans, but they've underestimated us. And that's going to be their mistake." At his words, a murmur of agreement rippled through the group. There was a flicker of something that had been buried under months of subjugation. Hope, perhaps. Determination, certainly. Alec gestured to the console. "We've been monitoring their communications, and we've found a weakness in their network. If we can disrupt their systems, we'll have a window to strike. It won't be easy, but we've got a plan." Standing beside him, Jules, a wiry engineer with a knack for improvisation, nodded. "We've rigged up some of the mining equipment to serve as makeshift weapons. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. And we've got the element of surprise on our side." Alec met each of their eyes in turn. "We need to hit them hard and fast. Show them that we're not just miners, that we're more than they ever imagined. Are you with me?" There was a moment of silence, then a chorus of voices rose in affirmation. It was the sound of resolve, of a group of individuals ready to fight for their freedom. As they dispersed to prepare, Alec took a moment to gaze out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the conglomerate forces hovered, confident in their superiority. But Alec knew that confidence would soon be shattered. The plan was simple but daring. They would use the station's machinery, designed for carving through rock and ice, to disrupt the enemy's communications and navigation systems. Jules had developed a makeshift EMP device, cobbled together from scavenged components, and they were betting everything on its success. As the final preparations were made, Alec took a deep breath and centered himself. The odds were against them, but humanity had always thrived under pressure. It was in their nature to adapt, to innovate, and to defy expectations. Today would be no different. The moment arrived. Alec and his team moved with purpose, each step calculated and precise. They made their way to the main hangar, where the mining drones, repurposed for battle, awaited them. Jules gave Alec a nod, signaling that everything was ready. "On your mark," she said, her voice carrying the weight of their shared resolve. Alec nodded, his mind racing through the plan one last time. "Go," he commanded, and with that single word, the revolt began in earnest. The hangar doors opened with a groan, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. The drones, equipped with makeshift weapons and the crucial EMP device, surged forward, propelled by jets of compressed air. They moved with a grace that belied their improvised nature, a testament to the ingenuity of the humans who had modified them. The enemy ships, sleek and imposing, lay ahead, their crews oblivious to the threat approaching. Alec watched from the control room, his heart pounding in his chest. They had one chance, one shot to make an impact. As the drones approached the perimeter of the enemy fleet, Jules activated the EMP. The device hummed to life, emitting a pulse of energy that rippled through space. Seconds later, the enemy ships flickered, their systems momentarily disrupted. "Now," Alec shouted, and the drones moved in, striking the vulnerable ships with the mining lasers and improvised explosives. The element of surprise worked in their favor, the enemy caught off guard by the sudden and unexpected assault. In the control room, Alec could see the chaos unfolding on the enemy's side. Ships veered off course, systems overloaded by the EMP. Communication channels crackled with confusion as the conglomerate forces struggled to regain control. The miners pressed their advantage, coordinating their attacks with precision. Each strike was a testament to their ingenuity and courage, their refusal to be cowed by a force that had seemed insurmountable. And then, the tide shifted. The conglomerate forces, realizing they had underestimated the miners, scrambled to regroup. But the damage was done. Their systems were compromised, their lines of communication severed. Alec watched the feeds with grim satisfaction. They had done it. The first real blow against their oppressors had been struck, and it had landed with stunning effectiveness. The miners, those underestimated humans, had shown their strength, their tenacity. As the enemy ships retreated to regroup, Alec turned to see his crew, their faces lit with a newfound sense of possibility. They had stood up, they had fought back, and they had won this battle. But Alec knew this was just the beginning. The conglomerate would not take this lightly. They would return, and likely in greater force. Yet, for the first time in months, Alec felt a surge of hope. They had proven they could fight, that they could stand against their oppressors. The control room buzzed with activity as the crew celebrated their victory, albeit cautiously. Alec allowed himself a moment to savor the triumph before his thoughts turned to the future. They had shown the enemy what humans were capable of, but they would need to prepare for the inevitable retaliation. He turned to Jules, who was already deep in thought, her fingers flying over the console as she assessed the situation. "We need to fortify our defenses," Alec said, his mind racing with possibilities. "They'll be back, and we need to be ready." Jules nodded, her eyes alight with determination. "We can reconfigure some of the mining drones for defense, set up traps. We'll make it as difficult as possible for them to get close again." Alec nodded, a plan forming in his mind. They would use the resources at their disposal, the skills and ingenuity that had brought them this far. They would adapt and overcome, just as humanity had done countless times before. As the crew set to work, Alec allowed himself a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought them here. They were miners, yes, but they were more than that. They were humans, with all the strength and resilience that entailed. The conglomerate had underestimated them, seen them as a nuisance to be crushed. But Alec knew that underestimating humanity was a mistake. They had shown today that they were a force to be reckoned with, that they would not be easily subdued. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and challenges. But for the first time, Alec felt confident that they could overcome whatever obstacles lay in their path. They had taken the first step towards reclaiming their freedom, and there was no turning back. As the control room buzzed with renewed energy and purpose, Alec felt a sense of camaraderie and unity that had been missing for too long. They were in this together, and together, they would see it through. The conglomerate forces had seen but a glimpse of what humanity could do. Alec intended to show them the full extent of it. It was time to prove that humans, resilient and indomitable, were not to be underestimated. The command center was a hive of activity, a frenetic ballet of organized chaos where every human effort converged like an orchestrated symphony. Here, in the heart of the asteroid mining complex, the air crackled with anticipation. The rebels, once mere laborers under the oppressive yoke of their corporate overlords, had seized control of their destiny. The battle for freedom, for dignity, reached its zenith. Jax, the charismatic leader of the uprising, stood tall amidst his comrades. His eyes, sharp and determined, swept over the room. The walls, now plastered with hastily scribbled plans and strategies, bore testament to the weeks of tireless planning. Beside him, Maya, the brilliant engineer and tactician, monitored the screens filled with swirling data and blinking lights. She was the brain to Jax's heart, her mind a relentless engine of innovation and ingenuity. "Jax, we're ready," Maya announced, her voice cutting through the din, as she nodded towards the main display where the asteroid's defense systems were highlighted in crimson. The corporation's security fleet, a menacing ensemble of automated drones and heavily armed ships, loomed ominously on the periphery of the asteroid's gravity well. Jax clenched his fist, his gaze fierce. "This is it, everyone. Everything we've fought for comes down to this moment. We show them what humanity is capable of. Let's give them a lesson they won't forget." "Jax," Maya interjected, a smile playing on her lips. "They won't see it coming." The corporation had made a grave mistake, underestimating the resilience and creativity of the human spirit. They had expected a simple uprising, a fleeting disturbance. They hadn't counted on the ingenious adaptability of those they subjugated. They hadn't anticipated the human capacity for unity and sacrifice. "Activate the neural network," Maya instructed. The room fell silent, anticipation hanging thick. Her fingers danced over the controls, linking together the minds and machines in a symphonic array of human-machine collaboration. Outside, the asteroid's surface erupted in a dazzling array of lights and energy. Mining equipment, repurposed and re-engineered, hummed to life. Laser drills transformed into formidable weapons, conveyor systems became rapid deployment lines, and the very ore they mined became their shield. The corporation's drones advanced, metallic sentinels under the control of cold, calculating algorithms. But these algorithms had never faced anything like this. The asteroid's surface bristled with a lattice of defenses, an intricate web of human creativity and technological prowess. The neural network, powered by the collective intellect and will of the miners, guided every move, every shot, with precision born of necessity. The first wave of drones met with fierce resistance. The miners, once mere operators of machinery, now stood as warriors. Each burst of energy, each beam of light, was a testament to their struggle, a declaration of their resolve. The drones, so efficient against uncoordinated foes, faltered against this unexpected masterpiece of strategy and synergy. Jax watched, heart-pounding, as the first drone exploded in a brilliant flash, a star extinguished in the void. Cheers erupted in the command center, a wave of exhilaration washing over the crew. The impossible was happening. Keep the pressure on, Jax urged, his voice a rallying cry. We're not giving them an inch. The drones, programmed to adapt, recalibrated their approach. But for every maneuver they tried, Maya and her team had a countermeasure. The miners' knowledge of the asteroid's terrain, honed over years of toil, was a weapon in itself. They used the asteroid's natural features to their advantage, drawing the drones into ambushes, trapping them in magnetic fields, and using the very rock they mined as a formidable ally. As the battle raged, the corporation's ships moved in, their hulking forms dwarfing the asteroid. They were the final, desperate attempt to crush the rebellion. But the miners were ready. They had prepared for this moment, turning the asteroid's surface into a fortress. Deploy the decoys, Maya commanded, her eyes glinting with determination. Hidden beneath the asteroid's surface, a fleet of drones, crafted from repurposed mining bots, launched into space. They darted towards the approaching ships, weaving intricate patterns in the void, drawing fire and attention away from the asteroid. The corporation's captains, confident in their superiority, realized their error too late. The decoys, agile and unpredictable, were more than mere distractions. They were the heralds of a new era, the embodiment of human ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. Jax watched as the corporate ships diverted their fire, their attention split between the decoys and the asteroid's defenses. It was their moment, now, he shouted, the command echoing through the neural network. With a synchronized effort, the miners launched their counterattack. Energy beams, precise and devastating, lanced through space. The ships, caught in a crossfire from the asteroid's surface and the decoys, faltered. One by one, they succumbed, explosions blossoming in the void like distant suns. The command center erupted in jubilant cries, the taste of victory sweet and intoxicating. They had done it. Against all odds, they had turned the tide. The corporation, once an indomitable force, lay in ruins, their defeat a testament to the power and resilience of humanity. In the aftermath, as the dust settled and the adrenaline waned, Jax stood amidst his comrades, his heart full. They had achieved the impossible, rewritten the narrative imposed upon them. The asteroid was theirs, a bastion of freedom carved from the cold rock of space. Maya joined him, her face radiant with triumph. We did it, Jax. We really did it. He nodded, his gaze sweeping over the command center, over the faces of those who had fought and sacrificed for this moment. We showed them what we're made of. They'll never underestimate us again. In the depths of space, the remnants of the corporation's fleet drifted, a silent testament to their catastrophic misjudgment. They had come to exploit and oppress, but had instead ignited a fire that burned brighter than any star. As the miners celebrated, the realization dawned that this was only the beginning. They had won their freedom, but with it came the responsibility to forge a new future, to build a society that honored the spirit and tenacity that had brought them this far. In the heart of the command center, Jax and Maya stood together, united in purpose. The stars stretched out before them, a vast expanse of possibility. They had won their place among them, not as victims, but as pioneers, as beacons of hope and human excellence. And so, with the universe as their canvas, they set forth to chart a new course, to write new chapters in the annals of human achievement. The asteroid mining revolt had ended, but the story of humanity's triumph had only just begun. The cosmic battlefield had finally quieted, leaving behind a scattering of debris and a profound silence that resonated throughout the asteroid belt. The human miners, now veterans of an unlikely revolution, stood victorious, their worn faces beaming with the hard-won knowledge that they had secured their freedom. As the dust settled, Captain Alara Trent surveyed the scene from the bridge of the repurposed mining vessel, now outfitted with the alien technology that had been crucial in turning the tide. Her gaze drifted across the stars as she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The rebellion had united humans from all walks of life, forged in adversity, and now the galaxy knew that humanity would not be so easily subdued. The message sent to the Galactic Council was clear. Humans demanded recognition and respect. The Council, initially dismissive, now acknowledged the change in power dynamics. Negotiations began in earnest, with humans at the table as equals. It was a new era for humanity among the stars, one where they were no longer mere laborers to be exploited but partners in the cosmic community. Back on the Astoria base, the once bustling mining hub had transformed into a vibrant settlement, teeming with life and possibility. The miners, engineers, and scientists who had been thrust into the roles of warriors were now builders of a new future. The holographic plaque at the entrance read, "Astoria Freehold Where Humanity Rises, a testament to their indomitable spirit." Major Rhea Carter, who had become a symbol of resistance for her tactical genius, stood beside Alara as they watched the children play in the artificial gravity playground. "We did it," Rhea murmured, her eyes glistening with the realization of their achievement. Alara nodded, feeling the weight of her own contribution lift. "We showed them that we're more than what they thought. We've changed everything." Elsewhere, the alliance with the alien Dixani was flourishing. Their shared technology and knowledge had opened new avenues for exploration and cooperation. The Dixani ambassador, Exeler, became a frequent visitor, learning from humanity's resilience and creativity. "Your people amaze us," Exeler had said. "Your spirit is a beacon." Nathan, once a mere mechanic, now found himself in charge of a newly formed engineering guild. Using the alien tech, he spearheaded innovations that would propel humanity's capabilities far beyond what had been conceivable before. His grin was infectious as he showed off the latest developments, his dreams finally within reach. Across the galaxy, news of the human uprising inspired other oppressed groups to rise up, igniting a wave of change. The revolt on the asteroid belt became a symbol of hope, a rallying cry for those seeking justice and freedom. As the sun set over Astoria, casting a golden glow over the settlement, Alara gathered the remaining leaders of the rebellion. They stood atop a platform overlooking the vibrant community below. "This is just the beginning," Alara declared, her voice powerful and unwavering. "We have proven that we are more than the sum of our parts. We are architects of our destiny. The universe is vast, and it's time we embraced our place in it." Cheers erupted from the crowd, a sound that echoed through the stars, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. And so, under the vast canopy of the galaxy, humanity carved a new path, a legacy of freedom and determination that would resonate through the cosmos for generations to come. This was not just a victory for them, it was a victory for all. The stars watched over them as they turned to the future, their place among the stars now secured, their legacy unyielding.